Good morning, fifth grade. So this is our last lesson of the school year for math. We are working with the volume of composed figures. This is chapter 11, lesson 11. So let's go ahead and get started. So today, fifth grade, you're going to use all of the same knowledge that you already have about finding volume of rectangular prisms. However, today you're going to be putting two rectangular prisms together and finding the total volume of different shapes that you will be seeing. So, for example, here you see a L-shaped figure. So we have to break this figure into two pieces. So we have to break it right here in order to have two separate rectangular prisms to find the total volume of these rectangular prisms. So they did it right over here for us, okay? So they did the standing one first. They did the length, which was 5, right here. So how they got 5 for that length, fifth grade, is because they looked over here at the length, because the length is the total is the same on both sides. So their length is still going to be 5. However, they needed to find their height. So the total height of this figure is 7 inches and the height of this figure is 3. So they had to take 7 minus 3 to get a height of 4, which you see right over here. And then the 3 inches on this side, that remains the same. So now they're ready for length times width times height, which is 3 times 5 times 4, giving them a total of 60. Now they just did the second one. So they broke it off right here. So the rectangular prism is like a flat box now for the second one. So they have 11 times 5 times 3, okay, because that's length times width times height. We didn't have to figure any out for that. They got 165. So now that they have the volume of the two separate rectangular prisms, what they're going to do is add the two rectangular prisms volumes together. So they're going to take 165 plus 60, and we get a total of 225 inches cubed because we are working with cubes, okay? All right, this is a different way to figure these out, okay? So this involves subtraction. So what they did is they did the entire volume of this figure. So they pretended like it was a closed figure. So all they did is they did their same length times width times height. So it would be 11 for the length, as we see here, 5 for the width, as we see here, and 7 for the height, as we see here. So they figured out, they pretended like there wasn't a gap here. So they figured out what 11 times 5 times 7 is, and that equals 385. So that would be the total volume of this cube if there was no gap there, but there is a gap that they made imaginary. So what they're going to do is they're going to be subtracting what they see inside that gap. So here, the width stays the same because as you can see here, it lines up. So the width does not change. That is still 5 inches. However, the length here is going to change, okay? Because you see the length up here has 11 inches, but we're not using all 11 of those inches. So they gave you the information that it was 8 inches there because they did 11 inches minus 3 inches because they have this part of the length labeled right here as 3 inches. So it would be 11 minus the 3, which gives us 8. And then the height, we have 7 here, which was our original height, and they gave us this little tiny height here, so we have to do 7 minus 3 to give us 4. So the second one, they gave us 8 times 5 times 4, which we know is 40 times 4 equals 160. So we have to subtract 160 minus, or 385 minus 160, and that gives us 225. See, it's the same exact way. However, this way you did subtraction, the other way you just added the two, okay? Either way, you have to break it down. So now we're gonna figure out the volume of this composite figure here, okay? So we broke it down into two separate rectangular prisms, okay? So let's do this rectangular prism on the top here first. Okay, so we know that this side matches the length that they gave us here because there's a dotted line and we know that that's the same length. So I'm just going to write a little 4 here so that we know that the length does not change. So our length is going to be 4. As you can see the little 2 here, that's our width. Now we have to figure out our height, okay? So our height, we have to do a little bit of subtracting. They give us our entire height here, but we're breaking it off right here. So if we look at the corner here, it says that this little tiny part is 3 inches. So we can easily subtract 6 minus 3 and know that this little part here is going to be 3 inches. So the top rectangular prism is going to have a height of 3 inches. So that means we have 8 times 3. 8 times 3 gives us 24. So that little rectangular prism is 24. Now let's find the second rectangular prism. So easily enough, we can do 8 times our width of 4 and times our 3. So that was pretty easy to see. We didn't have to do any subtracting there, okay? So 8 times 3 gives us, 8 times 4 gives us 32, multiplied by 3 gives us 96. So now we have to add those two numbers together, 24 plus 96. That's 10, carry your 1, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 120 cubic inches is our total here. Let me see if I can. And if I do this, 120 cubic inches is what we got, okay? All right, this one is a little bit trickier. So we have a person, her name is Patty. She added the value of the expression. She did 2 times 3 times 11 and 2 times 3 times 11 for the 2 separate rectangular prisms. So she cut it off right here, I believe, but she still said that it was 2 times 3 times 11, which didn't make much sense to me. So we need to figure the correct volume of this figure. So what I did is looked at the height here. The height is still going to be 2. So if you look at this here, we can easily just label the height there as 2. So it's going to be 2 times 3 times 11. She has that one right. But now we need to look over here. So we cut it off right there. I'm not sure where she got this new 11. So again, it's length, which is 3. And we have our height, so that's easy. We have those two. And then they gave us this 8 here, which was really convenient. We didn't have to do any subtracting. So that gives us 66 for this problem here, for that first volume over here. And this volume gives us 48 for this rectangle there. So all we have to do is add 48 plus 66, and we do 48, that gives us 14, we get 114. Let's see if that is correct. Let's see if I did that right. Yep, 114 is there. So now the correct dimensions, so we have our 8 here. So 5th grade, we really need to focus in. We have our 8, there's an 8, so we know that there needs to be a 2 and a 3 here. This one has an 11. We look up here. We need a 2 and a 3 there as well, okay? This one was kind of tricky. So first it asks us to solve it for volume in feet, cubic feet, and then it asks us to convert it to cubic inches. I'm not really sure why we needed to do it 2 different ways. So it was a little bit confusing for me. So what we do here is we are going to break it apart, okay? So we're breaking it apart into the platform and a little rectangle that is sitting on top of it. So the platform is going to be easy to do. We have our length times our width times our height of the platform. So 5 times 9 times 3, okay? And 5 times 9 times 3 is 135. So now we're going to find the volume of the little rectangle on top of the platform. We do have one problem though. We have to figure out what this isn't labeled, so we just have to match it with the 5 down here, okay? Because these are both the same lengths. So we have 4 times 3 times 5 down here, and that gives us 60. So that gives us a grand total. If we take 135 plus 60, that gives us a grand total of 195 feet cubed. But they want us to now convert it to inches, which was super confusing to me. So they said that they had 2 inches for every 1 foot. So we have to double this. We have to do 10. I'm going from here, okay? I'm going to write it down here. 10 times 18 times 6. And then we have to do, going from here, going to write it down here, 8 times 6 times 10. Okay, so 8 times 6 is 48, times 10, that's 480. That one was easy. I'm going to do this one quick on my calculator. So we have 10 times 18 times 6, and that gives us 1,080. So now we have to add those two to find our inches. So 1,080 plus 480, that gives us a grand total of 1,560 inches. So this one is feet, this one is inches. You have to write both of them today. I'm not sure why. Okay, so this one, it asks you to do the subtraction, which we just learned. Okay, so I just left the answers on here because this one is kind of tricky. So what you did is you have to find the volume of the entire thing. So if I just pretend like this is not an open space and it's just closed, okay, it's not anything open, I would do length times width times height, okay? So I know that my length is 11 times 13, okay? So 11 times 13 times a height of 8, okay? So when I figure that out, 11 times 13 times 8, that's 1,144 inches cubed. So that is the total if there was not that pretend gap there. So now, 5th grade, I have to figure out the volume of this imaginary cube here in the middle. Okay, so I know that my length is 13. That does not change, okay? As you can see here, I already have it written for you. The width is 7, because you look at this little space here, it gave us that label, 13 times 7. And the height is, so we have our height of 8 inches here, and then they gave us this little tiny 3 hiding back here. So we have to do 8 minus 3, and that gives us 5. Okay, so 13 times 7 times 5. Then we get 455 from that. Now, that's not what we get from, yes, that is what we get from there, because they asked us what is the empty space volume. So 13 times 7 times 5, that is our empty space volume. Then you have to just fill in the blanks that they asked you there. So today is a little bit tricky. You really have to use your eyes to search for those hidden clues to be able to figure out your missing numbers. I know you guys can do it. Please push through. We're almost done, and have a wonderful Tuesday.